Is it weird going from like we were talking about Washington earlier about how there just wasn't a lot of national attention. There wasn't a lot of heat around the program. I mean, it wasn't on national TV very much. Just good players, but it just kind of flew under the radar. To like with Philly, for better or for worse, there's always drama. There's always something, and we're in the middle of something now, but there's going to be something in 2 months. Every year he was there was something. It's like it's sort of a foregone conclusion that was going to happen. Was that something you were prepared for when you started having those conversations, or you just kind of figured it out when you got here?
No, I think I just started to get a feel for it. I mean, when you have a fan base that's so engaged and cares so much, like media outlets need to cater to that, right? And so if there's no story, so you got to stir some shit up. So
go find a story.
It's like, yeah, you got to go find, and if there isn't one to find, you got to make one. And so it's like, you can't really fault, like, who is there to fault? Like, it's part of the game, and Philly just does it at a very high level.
It do it at a high level. And I would say I would take the Philly approach over the apathetic approach of just not being engaged. Yeah. I actually didn't realize that sports radio was still a thing in the United States until I got to Philly. I was like, oh, people still listen to sports radio every morning.
There was one time I was going to Chick-fil-A to get my rookie year to get the chicken for everyone on the plane, and I'm standing in line, and this woman's standing behind me, and she's like, "Oh, are you Mattise?" I'm like, "Yeah, hi, nice to meet you." And she's like, "Don't listen to what they're saying on the radio." And I was like so perplexed because I'm like, "What do you mean what they're saying on what's happening on the radio?
What is the what is radio?"
I was so confused.
I had a driver my second year who would shuttle me up and down the New Jersey Turnpike, and there were so many, like, I had this stretch in March where, like, I just did not play well. I probably my best year of my career, my second year, but like just had a stretch in March where I couldn't make a shot. And I just remember like one morning getting in the car, and he starts like, he's like, they were talking about you on the radio this morning. And as soon as like he said it, I was like, Mark, shut up, man. Like, I don't want to hear anything. Like, please, God, no. Sometimes they don't have to find a story. Sometimes the story is just there, as is the case with one of your teammates right now. I'm not going to put you in a tough spot right now. We'd probably be a little disingenuous of us not to at least ask you about Ben and sort of what he's going through right now. My only sort of question is, do you think that like the Sixers, and I'm not going to single anybody out, but do you think the Sixers could have handled the end of last postseason a little bit better? It seemed from the outside like Ben was kind of thrown under the bus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said. And to the last point you just made, he was thrown under the bus. Like, you asked me if I'd been booed or people had been mad at me. Like, I made the foul that ended that lost us the last game, and I received almost no. Like, there's a little bit on Twitter, but like the Ben hate was so much louder that
it had been growing though.
Yeah, but it's just like, just to build the frame of reference. Like, it was, I lost us the game, and which lost us the series, and no one really spoke about it. But they wanted to talk about the passing up the dunk and passing it to me more than my foul. And anyways, but I think that both sides play a decent role in it, right? Like, neither side's really helped themselves through the situation. Whether whoever started it, whoever's making it worse at this point, doesn't really matter. But like, either side has played a pretty decent role in the situation that we find ourselves in right now. And like, on a human level, as like his teammate, like as a friend, you hate to see people put in this situation that's so heavily covered by the media, because people lose sight of this human aspect of all of us as athletes, especially in these times, especially in controversial times where we're looked at as like it's a commodity. I don't even know exactly like what people consider us in these moments, but it's not as humans. And like, just so on a personal level, I really do feel for him, because this would suck for anybody.
Yeah, I typically don't agree with like the both sides claim, but I would say, like, and I'm friends with Ben, and I had him as a teammate and loved him as a teammate. Like, he probably could do more to help himself, especially ingratiate himself a little bit with certain people. But I also think that it's like, it's one of those things that comes with playing here and comes with being a max player. I guess my problem with the entire situation is that I feel like at this, I'm going to defend Ben a little bit, and I've said this on the podcast before. I feel like at times people just can't appreciate Ben for who he is as a player. Like, we can't appreciate Ben's greatness for Ben's greatness. And that's not to say he's blameless in any of this. But we haven't gotten to the point where, like, Ben is a great player. Here's what he's great at. Let's just appreciate that. We want to nitpick the things that he doesn't do that we all want him to do. And I don't think that's fair to Ben. Again, Ben's not blameless, but I don't think that's been fair to Ben.
No, that's a very, that's your Philly thing though. That's like a very Philly thing. One of my like good friends, he's like pretty active on Twitter, Nate Jones on the NBA.
Yeah, it's our guy.
Yeah, it's our guy,
you guys know Nate?
We know Nate.
Yeah,
Homie.
an amazing guy. And that's one of the things that he's been consistently saying is that like we're overlooking the fact that, just disregard like some of the things you just said, like the fact that a number one pick panned out as much as he did. Like, that's not even the case all the time. And like, people lose sight of that. But it's like to have someone who's so dominant and just happens to lack a few skills that not every NBA player even has, and to be like highlighted more than his true strengths is just, it really doesn't make sense. But that's the sports world for you.
Well, I was going to ask when we were talking about defense earlier. I mean, we've talked about this in the show with a bunch of different guys. Some of the stuff he does defensively is, on a different level than anybody else in the league. And I'm curious how much you've learned from him, just in terms of, you're coming into this and you had this skill set in college and in high school and everything like that. But you've basically been fortunate to be able to watch somebody like this who has a couple years of, advancement on you and has done this at such a high level.
Yeah, he's one of the examples of like the physical ability, right? Like his ability to just flip a switch and lock down an entire court is like nothing I've ever seen. Cause he's 6'10" and runs like a gazelle. I've watched him pin Luka to the half court line. Like, and that's not, Luka's a big dude and he's a very skilled guard. Like, that's unheard of. Like, he's done things that it's like, you could never teach that to anyone. And like, that's not something you could even like develop over the course of your career. Like, he has the ability to do things that a lot of players will never be able to do.